So here's volunteer fire.
And then there's which is the statute limits liability of the property owner on the state. So I picked out the
That if you grant access, you're some level of immunity to it.
And there are some that use it
What you got there?
for the
I need caffeine.
people.
I don't get at least 3 or 5 hours caffeine a day.
It's like,
There's a headache and
that's
Still haven't heard anything about that. Just saying, how we do. You told me you said. Yeah, it's gotta be 6 months ago.
Oh, yeah.
Who's doing one? Signs by tomorrow. Let's make sure he did it.
Yeah, well, that's really triggering.
Kevin, that fence is around his playground. I do have a call into it. The work was down there. That was down before. We met today afternoon in preparation for this meeting for something, so he didn't say anything. It's up to you. We can
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming out to this week's workshop meeting. We can start with a pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting is now called to order. In line with the Borough Civil Rights Homesteading Policy of Open Government and in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, I wish to provide with adequate notice of this regular meeting was sent to the Asbury Park Press and other local newspapers on January 10th, 2022. Each instance, the date, time, and location of this meeting will provide a notice. This meeting is open to the public. Roll call. Councilmember Bieber. Here. Virgil. Here. Booker. Here. Catalano. Healer. Lumley. Here. And Mayor Rose. All right, first up, we have remarks from the audience. If you want to be heard, just please state your name and your address. You've got a few minutes to address everybody. Good morning, Peter.
Yes, I did. I'm Pam from 6 Peninsula Avenue. On April 25th, I received a phone call from Joanne Fleck Adams at the Yellow House on Peninsula right next to me, that she was going to fix it up and it was going to be a pot dispensary. It was pretty much a done deal. So I just want that clarified. Is that a consideration in on residential street on Peninsula?
I don't know if I can speak for Rich, Joe, or Dave. I mean, there's no one has brought that to the governing body. It would have to be a process like anyone else. They have to get approval of the state. There will have to be zoning considerations and everything else. So it would just be any one of the other applicants coming in.
Okay, well, I wanted to see and have clarifying language that E1 zone be added and fronting on Ocean Avenue. If you're going to put something together for dispensary, because I have my tenant has 3 young boys, and I really don't want that next door. And I would appreciate the value of our property.
This council will be deciding first if they want to continue and move forward with establishing a dispensary in Seabright. And second, I know Rich put together an ordinance. The council will have to establish what zones they are permitted in, and they have not done that at this point. Today there is going to be some discussion on that, I believe, so hang around. They'll be discussing that.
Because it hasn't been in a residential zone yet in the state of New Jersey.
There's no business in the residential zone as it stands right now. So regardless of whether or not it's a dispensary or a store or what have you, there's no business in the residential zone. The planning would not approve a business in a residential zone, period. Regardless of what type of business it is, they just wouldn't do it. So even if we suggested, oh yeah, we can do it, the planning board, it's still got to go before the planning board to get approved in that sense, because it needs to go through a certain set of variances. And without the variance for that use property, for that use of that property, and the planning board would have to approve that. They never approved that.
But also they start from here,
Well, yes, we're right now we're in very early stages of this ordinance. We're just basically saying yes, or deciding on whether or not we're saying yes or no to actually having one in town. That's step 1.
No, I understand.
Then step 2 is going to be setting up zoning, setting up this, that, and we're going forward. Rich,
we'll get into that. Step 1 is before anything can happen, before there's any application, before there's any consideration, is an ordinance. And the council hasn't got to step 1. They do have a draft in front of them. They've got a lot to discuss. And I'm sure you'll hear a lot of discussion. A lot to discuss about that ordinance. But they haven't got to step 1. And the ordinance is proposed certainly doesn't have anything in terms of, and again, it's just a proposal, in terms of establishing any residential zone, for sure.
Okay, because I was just told it was a done deal, and
They haven't even got step 1 yet, so.
and if that's a consideration that everybody needs to think here that's making that decision, would you want it next door to your house?
well, even if we do approve an ordinance today, there's no guarantee that we'll ever get licensed because the state gives out licenses. So we could say, yes, we'll do it, or we want one in town, and some, then we gotta go through a process of picking who the business is, who the business owner is, where it's gonna be, that type of thing. They have to, all that has to be figured out ahead of time before the state even goes, okay, yes, you need that license. So, and then even if all those ducks are in a row, the state can say, no, you're not getting a license in Seabright. So, I mean, it's just that simple, because they're only going to give out so many licenses. This isn't going to be like a free-for-all. I mean, at first, who knows what's going to come down the pike in 10 years from now, or 5 years from now. But, at first, they only have a set number of licenses. So, who gets them is at the state's discretion where they're going to be situated.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter what the address is, but, I can't think of they have an override body, but there's been zero chatter about opening to residential districts, so I don't think there's any chance of that happening.
Anywhere, in any state, there's been nobody's been.
No, I know that, but
Anywhere in
that
the state.
was what was discussed with me on the phone, so I have major concern.
Sure, understood.
And anybody would, seriously. Okay.
Thanks, man.
Sometimes you have to consider the sources of those conversations too. So,
Anyone else like to be heard? Anybody else?
Yeah, yes, quickly, this is Craig Tenza from 3 Church Street. Just a question on one of the comments that was just said. You said even if we approve the ordinance today, did I hear that sentence correctly? You can't approve an ordinance today, can you?
no.
Okay.
No, today is just a discussion on the draft ordinance. We're not even close to approving it. The actual approval would have to happen on our Tuesday night meetings, and it will be announced. And if it were to get approved, if we were to get to that stage, it would all be announced prior.
And it's also,
I was just commenting on the choice of words, approve an ordinance, which can't be known without a public hearing on call. Is that correct?
that is correct. It's a two-step process. First is an introduction, and then after.
Yeah, you heard it correct, that was just a misspeak. It's not going to be voted on today.
Thank you, Mayor.
Would anyone else like to be heard? Anybody online? No one else?
Also, just a quick thing. Hi, good morning.
Yeah.
Hearing everything that was just discussed, I think it might also be worthwhile. I know you said there's probably only a few number of licenses that are going to be approved, but given the fact that we're a small town, there might be value in just waiting a year. I know there's a long, what you just discussed, there's discussion and then you put the ordinance and you vote on it, so there's time there and that's going to take it up. But it may also be worthwhile just to see how other towns kind of perform whoever receives a license. So just a thought of, do we pull the trigger now or do we wait? Understanding there are only probably a few licenses to be had, I'm sure in a year or 2 years' time. More may come forward if we're seeing the benefits of it. So it's just a thought of maybe we just kind of watch as a point of consideration versus moving forward.
But to that fact, we also may not get. They might get that limit and say that's it.
Yep, they might not, right?
Right.
Given the state of the national state of affairs there. So there's something to consider. Timing is always either a benefit.
Yeah, that's what we did last year, is that, the majority of everybody, I think last year was in favor of the concept, but they didn't approve it because, not because necessarily to other towns, but because it was pretty bad, poor state guidance on it, so.
Yeah.
Take it into consideration. Anyone else? Anyone else you heard?
Terry Gates, 7 Garden Way. I was wondering how much you take into consideration in discussing this, the reliability and the responsibility of the people who apply for a license, if they come well-grounded with an excellent reputation.
Well, I'll take a minute that here.
Sure.
And Kevin talked about this process, but by which this entire process will be handled in the roadmap to even get there. There are many hurdles that have to be cleared. Some regulatory at the state level, and some are within the purview of the council and the planning board, etc. So one of the things that a municipality has the ability to do is to pick and choose based on an open and transparent application process who they will grant a letter of recommendation or a letter of approval to. So that is where we will be able to review the background of the applicant, their experiences, their resume, their financials, right? To make sure that the entity is the kind of partner that we would want in the town. So the law was written to provide the municipality with the purview and the authority to be able to determine who we would grant, a letter of recommendation or approval to. And then even then, when that letter is submitted with ratification to the state can still say yes or no, right? So there are multiple hurdles. We're not even close.
Yes.
So.
And to that point, I saw a sample resolution in there for our review, and it had parameters, recommended parameters in there, including like the suitability of the site, the business plan itself, do they have the financial backing and so forth. So there are quite a few recommended things to follow in case the town will go down that route, just to review an appropriate candidate.
Yeah, that's one of the things we're going over today, is in this draft resolution that we have, is the point system at which people will be rated based on certain criteria. So if you have, X number of criteria, you get X kind of percentage for this, that, and the other thing. And those numbers will then be tallied, and we'll decide from there who best fits those criteria and that application. And so that's what we're going to discuss today. One of the things that we're going to discuss today, based on this draft ordinance.
We're very early in the process. I trained at the station. There's none of that.
I guarantee we'll look at this about 6 times before we say yes.
Yeah, like I said before, last year a lot of towns jumped on board pretty quickly, and Seabright, of course, did the year to review again, which is one of that.
I raised that because while I don't know people who are I don't personally know people who have applied for a license. I do know about the reputation as being stellar, but I don't know the person is in no way an endorsement. That's why I raised it.
Thanks. All right, anybody else in favor today?
Yeah, I realize this is on the resolution, or excuse me, is on the agenda. But when will the virtues of why we're even discussing this be debated? Like, why are we going to have this discussion? What are the positives?
I mean, it has been discussed at many prior council meetings. I know a lot of our meetings are pretty sparsely attended, unfortunately, but it has been a topic quite a few of them. Like last year, it's been a discussion. This year, I don't know if anyone on the governing body or whatever to speak
We've
to
had about 4 discussions this year alone. Actually, about 4 discussions this year alone, at least 2 or 3 last year.
Yeah.
Into this process. So, I mean, it's a new thing. Obviously, there's a big learning curve here, but there's a lot of money to be left on the table here for any township that either says yea or nay to. I mean, the majority of the voting populace of New Jersey voted yes for it to be legalized. So it's going to be in the town whether or not we want it or not. Delivery services cannot be stopped. So people can still get delivery. Hell, you can probably get delivered to the beach if you wanted to, if you're sitting there. Of course, you can't smoke on the beach, but, I mean, you can't keep it out of the town. So the whole question is, do you want to make money on it, or do you want to leave it on the table? I mean, we're talking about $1 billion a year industry to start. So if you look at the numbers across the country, some of the numbers coming in are just absolutely astronomical.
So just to ask the question, obviously it is about money, it is about revenue. What would the borough get in terms of gross of revenue? They would get what percent?
There is a 2% municipal levy that's committed on cannabis sales in the borough. So again, to answer the gentleman's question, the economic impact. The estimates are all over the place. It'll be greater than 0, less than $1 million, right? So it's difficult to pin down a specific figure, right? But what is clear is that it will bring an economic benefit to the town. That isn't the only consideration, but it's a consideration. Right?
Well,
Hold on, just to make sure I understand the numbers. At 2%, if we had a dispensary that did $2 million, we'd get $40,000, right? Am I doing that math right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, if the numbers from the initial day of sales, keeping in mind that it was, the initial day of sales, so people were on the line waiting and hoping to get, whatever, blah, blah, blah. In New Jersey alone, the first day of sales, $1.9 million. The through 12 dispensaries. So if you do the math out there and you factor that in, that's almost $3,200 a day at 2%. Now granted, that is the absolute top end of those numbers because you're talking
That's a
opening.
really apples to apples comparison. I think we can both agree. The state of our population with 12 available dispensaries. I see the point. I'd actually be very interested in what the revenue projections were, because it's 40 grand. This isn't worth the time of discussion.
It could be, like you said, the numbers could be anything. It could be all over the map. We don't really know until things start to take off in New Jersey. We've started to see those numbers come in, and based on those projections, I mean, the numbers are quite impressive.
Thanks for anything else that we heard today. Anyone else in person or online? Last call. All right, thanks everyone. All right, so we'll move on to our regular items for discussion. First up, will be capital projects update from our administrator, Joe.
Sure, we finished up both of the major projects, the pavilion which we're in and the municipal complex next door. There are a couple of punch list items we're still working on. You'll see some concrete work over the summer in front of this building, finishing it up, tying in drains that weren't tied in to begin with, so they're going to cut some concrete out front and tie those in, but they're wrapping up. As we've said on many occasions, they are on target, on budget, and being completed. We still have some dialogue to continue with the architect that Rich has been working on. We'll be in front of a mediator hopefully very soon, and trying to wrap that up. Also under capital updates, I'd like to turn the page a little bit. We've been working on the old municipal complex, primarily Councilman Lamia, but with the help of others, the project looks really great inside, and if anybody's seen it, though, it doesn't even look like it was before. It's beautiful, the floors, the new lines that are available for pickleball, that are available for some youth basketball. The gym isn't going to be for competitive basketball because of the size and other things, but it can certainly be used for a variety of events. We did the Pine Car Derby a few weeks ago. It was a big success. John was there and spearheaded that. A long way of saying that we now have some interest in the gym of people that would like to be able to use it. And we've gone back and forth, the councils have gone back and forth about pricing, about what we should require or not. And I think in a dialogue with Councilman Lamia, I think we have to try it and see what works. For a nominal fee, you can increase it at any time you want, just to cover our cost at the beginning, to see if there is a revenue stream that people want to pay for using that. I know that Don Klein, our beach manager and rec director, has spoken to Hoop Skills. John, maybe you could explain it.
So we've been looking for how do we get this started. We did a final derby with the Boy Scouts from Monmouth County. They did their second tier year. They had 120 entries of those little cars, and they had a great day. That was before we did any work in the gym, and it went really well. We didn't have any issues whatsoever. They made sure, as they cleaned up afterwards. It was really good. So then Don and I have been talking about what other things can you do. It's a rec center. It's not necessarily a basketball. We did add the pickleball lines because pickleball seems to be very popular. And I've never played, so I don't know it yet, but I know that people pay $25 an hour to get on a pickleball court. This group does a workshop for kids. They bring the kids in and they work into a basketball program. They met with Don and went through the gym this week, and they're interested in doing it. They picked 28 I'll call them hours, where they would like to come in and do a 1 hour or 1.5 hour program. And we were talking between $40 and $50 an hour to get them started. So that's where we are. We're going to evaluate that. We're going to look at what are the nuances that come with it. Right? We're coming up on beach season. It's pretty much what I was told. These kids are gonna get dropped off and they're gonna go to the gym, but some people are gonna stay around. We did repair also the old council chambers, so, Public Works repaired the wall, repaired the floors, and, we reorganized that room because the seniors meet in there, so there's tables and chairs at the back. And, a homeowner from Rumson donated a pool table and around 40 board games that we're looking to, over time, do something with the kids and bring them in to do some kind of activities right after school, and maybe get to more interested these leagues. We have the leagues, an out-of-pickleball program where you would come in the evening, that would bring patrons in, right? After pickleball, they're going to probably hang around in town, or maybe they come before and go to the beach. So we think it'll be a good thing, and I'm not 150% that it's a community center. We should be making it available to the community. When I look at all the other towns, if you're an outsider, there's a fee associated. When you're an insider, it's either lesser or not a fee. So we're looking to put that together. I have a couple of volunteers that are all women, so I want their feedback because I have no way to reach the children of Seabright. We're going to probably send out some kind of flyer that says, if you're interested, give us a call or maybe come to see the new gym and see what it looks like. So this one is the first one. They've already given us the dates that will start in June. And it's a couple of hours during the week, right all the way through till August. So it's not like they've taking the whole gym away from us.
It's like a 5 to 6:30, or there's some earlier, right after school closes. But I think we'd like to give it a try and see if it works. We're never going to get started.
We got to watch the volleyball game too. They use that parking lot there.
No, parking's always going to be an issue in the summer here. But we're hoping this is a year-round affair. Maybe summers aren't the right thing, but he wants to try it.
Yeah, I think to turn someone away early on and see how it goes.
How's our air conditioning over there?
Everything has been restored. I do have a quote from Sean. There's a can out in the back. It's all rotten. To me, we should take care of
On the
that.
condenser.
Yeah, and make sure that it doesn't, go bad on the bad, right?
Yeah.
July 18th. But the whole system was redone about 2 years ago. We've got a new roof on the building. We do have proposals to redo the facade, which is decaying, and
Really?
the railing that's out front is wood, it's rotted, so we're looking at, we would take that down ourselves, Public Works,
And then have someone
and then
come
we
in.
get some quotes to replace that railing just on the Ocean Avenue side. To me, it's been 10 years, right? So if you look at it, we didn't do anything to the building except use it for 10 years, I think it's a good investment going forward.
Joe, to your point, putting an initial framework in place on how it gets used, I think we should do that quickly, because trying to get it perfect is going to take us time.
Exactly.
So let's do it quickly, and we can adjust it going forward. But some sort of online system, John, I know has been working this for a while, and I think the great things about this, besides it being good for the youth and adults, as John has said, is it brings people to town, which is good for the merchants. So I think getting this framework in place, if we can, before Memorial Day weekend would be a good thing.
We'll do that.
Yeah, that's progress.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we have a template, so we're not starting from scratch.
Yeah, it's coming full circle too, which is one of our goals. I remember back to the late 70s and early 80s, my cousins would all play there. They play basketball there in the rec center. So it's literally the same, and it's coming full circle now. It's doing the same thing. I mean, we're doing more things now, but yeah, they used to play basketball and they play there all the time. It was a pretty successful rec program. And if you want to reach the parents and kids of Seabright, maybe make an announcement for the next school relation meeting. You'll get them all.
We know the total number of children at each of the three schools, the two in Oceanport and then the Shore Regional. So we were hopeful that the principal would cooperate. We don't necessarily know everyone's name, but if we gave them a stack and asked them to give it to the Seabright children, we were hopeful that they would do that.
And then once the word gets out that, hey, I went through it and it was okay, there would be more participation.
Yeah, also facade stuff too, because that needs a little TLC there. So I look forward to that. That'd be great.
That's all I have.
Well, so Sandy was on adult basketball, they were using it quite regularly. mostly non-supervised.
Yeah, it's got a lot of use over the years, and it really has been popular. So, I mean, I think so for like a half court, but it's used quite a bit for basketball and last 10 years. So it works. That's all we have. So.
That's it, here for me.
All right, thanks, Joe. All right, we're on for our public safety update. Our search chiefs are here. Our police chief, Rotary.
Good morning, everybody. I'll make it pretty quick. Last month, we had a total of about 352 separate calls for services. Last month, we had pretty much our first official firework meeting with Councilman Keeler, Councilman Booker, myself, John Ayers, Jim McHugh. We had Sandy Mulhern, members of the Monmouth County Prosecutor's Office and the Monmouth County Office of Emergency Management. So we have a lot of logistics to work out. It's looking pretty good. I think almost 100% is going to go. So we have our next meeting sometime in the beginning of June where we'll have Tom Hagee will be back again along with the firework company. And looks good for 4th of July. Right now we have no rain date, so they're going off on 4th. There's not rain date going here. What we're going to do is really just start working with the state police just to get enough of the manpower. Our biggest issue is the manpower, and we have enough, just enough equipment that it doesn't want to go to Long Ranch first because they're having fireworks the same night. Other than that, we had last week we had training with Chad did pretty much all of the OEM emergency services for Seabright, CPR, any kind of training possible with Mike Hudson. I don't know if anybody showed up to look at it. There was some pretty good training. As you know, the parking passes are in. Come get them, all right? Monday through Friday, any day, come get your parking passes. Because if you get a ticket, we'll come to them. For a couple weeks now, we have them. We got 2 per household. John Arias has been working every single day on the meters. John, you want to give us a meter report?
Sure, yeah. All the meters up and running, the firmware has been updated, they're ready to go. Road department's working hard to get all the lots ready. They're going to be ready for Sunday, and so it's the beginning of the season, so we're good to start. And all the new rates have been updated in the meters, so.
Thanks, John. Very good. And so this is going live Sunday. Those machines are going to be on, and you can start paying Anchorage, this lot, the one next to Ogden Street, and the end of Church Street is the business/residential parking. That will be open on Sunday. So you have to have a permit to park in there, but it's going to go. If anybody has any questions over here.
Yeah, how much is the resident parking permit?
You don't get when you're on Ivy Way.
But out there yet?
What's that?
Yes.
Yeah, only for the downtown residents, that we don't charge. Only for the business we charge.
Only the business?
$75.
So it's only downtown?
Yep. And some of the other side streets, if you go on to the borough website, you can see the streets you actually pay parking.
Thanks, Chief. Any questions for the chief?
And then we'll talk further in the executive session.
Good, we'll hear. Thanks. All right, Fire Chief Shepard.
What did you put in We're at about 132 calls for the year. April was actually a busy month for us. We did just under 50 calls, which is double the amount that we usually do in April. I think we're gearing up for a busy season. Our seasonal academy starts tomorrow night, Friday night, with an orientation, and it's Saturday and Sunday all day. Sunday we will be at the Fire Academy. Again, open invite. I know a couple of you guys have been up there before. 9 a.m. up in Middlesex County. We'll be there all morning. Again, open invite. If you guys want to come up and check it out. Working on cleaning up all the stuff in the lot. 2 of the army trucks have been towed to county. We're working on getting the box from the condemned Deuce and a Half switch over to that deal truck that we had. That way we have a second rescue vehicle to go with the blue. Again, county's doing that work for significantly cheaper. And then from that point on, Deuce and a Half to be auctioned off. We'll see if Joe, maybe we can get it auctioned off at the county lot, so we'll get it back here.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that.
We'll put it on, gut deals.
Yep.
And Pictures, yeah.
So, and then we'll be working on this weekend, getting everything else out of there. Maintenance costs get rushed, and I'll print a report so you guys can see it. We're approaching $50,000 this year for the repair bill. So, that's what it is. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Have an update on the fireman's fair.
Fair to go. Forgot about the fair. It's not like that. Fair to go starts next Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Steve's part running that. We had a meeting last night, and he's good. He doesn't need anything. He's square.
Could you speak up loud?
Is that?
Could you speak a little loud?
I'm sorry, I'm speaking this way. The fair is this weekend, or next week, sorry, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I don't know the times off the top of my head, it's not my thing, it's one of our, but I know it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Thursday, Friday at night, Saturday, Sunday, all day.
It's a great event. Our only concern is we're going to get them out of there.
Yeah, so we discussed it last night, that lot will be cleaned up Sunday night before we.
Thank you.
So we have all the volunteers we need to make
No.
booths?
No. So the booths are being, yeah, so the booths are being ran by the Recreation Park Don Klein. I know Don was looking for some volunteers to help run booths. That money goes directly to the rec department, that doesn't go to us, so if you guys want to help the rec department out, I know he needs that help. Maybe we'll have Don put something out where they can reach out to him, communicate with him. I'll talk to him, see if we can post something.
There's a lot of carbon cans we have in hand, so.
Yeah, again, that money goes right to the rec department, that doesn't go to us.
It's a really easy job.
Yeah.
3 balls, take their money.
Right. Exactly.
And you know, the dogs and I will text all my people too. Okay.
Yeah. So I know Fairhaven Fire comes and helps us because we reciprocate around their big fair at the end of the season. So we're good on our side. I know that doesn't help us.
Actually, thanks. Any questions for Chad? Thanks. All right, we are on to number 3, to the ongoing discussion with the Moody's purchase of that small section of property right in front of their business. I know Chris is here also. I see he's presented their plans for that sidewalk area in front of there, including the awning, and I think our engineer Greg will speak to that also.
Brad, I'll be real quick. Can you pass that out, everyone? Please, a couple guys. And I'll get this real quick. Joe, you need a copy of this. Joe asked me for a sketch and all that. Real quick. We since our April meeting, we've got engineers and attorneys involved, and things are taking time. So this sketch that I have is just preliminary. Insight Engineering has been hired to do all this as of April 15th. So they will come with a site plan with the subdivision, with everything. Long story short, it takes time. There was some questions about ADA access. I think that's why you guys brought this up today. We did take a picture. So the current sidewalk right here has an ADA. That's in pink on your picture, right? So this access is ADA and dead ends, okay? Dead ends over here, right? We would be actually adding an additional ADA access, which is the blue dot in the middle, which would be basically the front of our door. And then when we're talking about adding an awning, right? Not really an awning, well, be an awning. But and again, that's down the road once we get past this stage. It would be very similar to what you see out there. It's basically would be, the idea is to have a pergola that would be similar to this over a third of the property. That's it. So it's not a permanent structure. Just instead of umbrellas, just an awning. Any questions, guys?
So, Chris, one of the main questions that we all had was around the sidewalk and how it's going to work. So, in the sketch that you've given us, the yellow is the proposed sidewalk.
No, the yellow is the proposed purchase area. Everything in the green is what currently exists. Where that pink dot is. Right? You see a pink dot?
Yeah.
This is where that's it. This is it. There's your access straight through here. So the access is okay.
I do understand what you're saying. I mean, one of our concerns was that the sidewalk would actually go through the middle of your entertainment property, where your tables are. And the thought was that there was some way of diverting that around the property. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, Greg is going to speak.
Okay, so what, Chris, what are you proposing with regard to sidewalk access? What's in your plan? Keep it where it is?
It's basically keep it where it is, yes, and add another ADA ramp.
Okay, thank you.
That's it. Very simple. Yeah, and Greg, if you have any questions, let me know. And once the Insight Engineering comes with a plan, I know we'll have to discuss this once again.
That's
You're welcome.
Yeah, one of the things Mr. Keeler and I looked at, we looked at the actual sidewalk that goes through there. And you can imagine when you see the picture now with the tables there, there's no patrons in there. When there's all sorts of hub and bub in there, there's no defined sidewalk through there. So most people who are coming through that aren't going to visit the restaurant aren't going to know to go through that area. It certainly won't. And that's what's happening now, I'm sure, is they're coming around and walking in the parking lot, which is extremely dangerous, especially for people who are backing out nighttime hours. There's no defined way for pedestrians to get around the spot. So on the handout I gave you today, I apologize, just a quick sketch because we started this week. I'm recommending that we give the owner of Woody's that access way through the sidewalk. We'll let him use that totally, give it to him, but we put our 4-foot wide sidewalk, and we'll have to talk about his buffering probably, but he has how to push that back. But I recommend we put that on the outside of his facility. That way it separates the sidewalk pedestrian traffic from restaurant traffic, and then there's no confusion. And in the end of this, I just tied into, you have the beach access way on the left side, or the north side of the property, which is a paved walkway. And I just recommend that we paint strike that sign so everybody knows that's a beach access way. Not really a lot of money to paint strike it, but we tie the sidewalk into the sidewalk that's now in front of the sidewalk, the southwest corner of the firehouse property. Because right now that's just a stub sidewalk that doesn't really, there's no way to get from the south side of Woody's over to there in a defined path. Yeah. And that's what I recommend we do. And part of that is, we might want to consider if we put that sidewalk out in the parking lot area, change straight to pavement. I recommend we probably eliminate space 601 and make that a non-parking spot, just because it would back people straight up into that sidewalk. If you want to keep that spot, then we'd have to probably put that sidewalk up in the landscape berm between the firehouse property and their driveway, which is pretty steep. So we're putting a retaining wall in. It's kind of costly, so it probably more beneficial financially just to eliminate that space.
That's 601 is a different spot than that.
Right, and it would be a turnaround area since it's a dead-end parking, give people an opportunity to pull in there, because it shouldn't really happen a lot, but it's supposed to have a permanent parking there, which would be fair.
Maybe share this with Woody's,
This is the first, I want to share it with you guys.
This is exactly what I was suggesting.
So right now, there are planters on the outside, almost like ballards, right?
They're going to be ballards, yeah. But they're acting as ballards now.
So is that the boundary that you're looking for?
Yes.
Is that?
That's the boundary. That's what's in, I don't know what color it is. That's in yellow. It would be on the outside of the yellow.
That's you or?
No, essentially, our sidewalk would be the westerly side of that yellow spot. So we would push him back.
Here, so bollard basically
So basically, that middle walkway would now just shift west.
Correct. You could fully use that without having enough through.
Right. So those tables would no longer be on the boundary. They would be inside, and the walkway would be on the western flank.
And one of the things I think also, just hearing, the canopy, not that I'm advocating you do or don't do the canopy, that's your decision. But certainly, I think if we put the sidewalk here, you do give them permission to put the canopy in. That canopy would now be isolated 4 feet from the cars also, which would be a further safety, because you don't want somebody backing into the
And we wouldn't want the canopy to be over the entire area. It would probably be a third, just for in case of inclement weather.
Greg, I have a question, and maybe the chief can comment on this also. I know we've discussed this in the past, but I just want to confirm that both you and the chief are comfortable with the separation between the car backing up and that walkway is sufficient, not introduce undue risk.
Well, it's not an ideal situation, but usually your driveway aisles are 24 feet wide, and we have 7 feet there.
Okay.
But it is dead-end parking, so you don't have the high volume. Just really, I've been more worried about the lighting there, making sure we have adequate lighting, and I think that there's an adequate safety factor there.
So is it fair to say the next step is for them to get together and try to figure out the best way forward?
Well, yeah.
And once the engineer gives the final, dog and pony show, we'll we'll just shift that to the rest.
Okay.
All right, thanks. I appreciate it. Stay put. And you're next on the agenda.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. All right, next up is also the bulkhead ordinance updates. So,
I can provide an update on that there, okay?
yeah, and then I think Greg's going to speak to also.
Okay, just a little bit of background if I could first.
Sure.
So the intent on this is all about flood protection in the town, and the administration committee has been working on this ordinance. The three things we had to do in order to move this forward was, number one, develop an updated ordinance, which we believe had sufficient time to allow the work to get done. So that update has happened, it's been reviewed by the council and approved, but it's waiting for the next two actions to take place. The next action is to do an assessment of the repair costs of the three bulkheads that are responsible for the ones that require work really belong to Seabright. So we wanted to do an assessment of what that would mean, because we certainly feel we have to fix our bulkheads in town, and we expect the residents to do that as well. So Greg and the team have been in the process of evaluating actually what the cost is for all the repairs for the bulkheads in town that need improvement, and also what it would be specifically for the three that we're responsible for. So action number two is to put those costs together, and Greg has worked that. We have not reviewed that yet, but when we do, we'll certainly be willing to share that. And then the third action was to determine whether or not the town wanted to entertain an assessment ordinance. And what that would be is a way of allowing the group that require repairs to conduct that and the cost associated through an assessment process versus individually paying for the bulkhead improvements themselves. There are pluses and minuses to each side of that. So what we're going to do this upcoming week is we're going to have a meeting to assess the town's desire to do it through the assessment process, and that will include finance, DPW, legal, to make a determination of whether or not we want to entertain that approach. Once we get that locked down, when we have the costs to do the work and we understand the assessment strategy and whether or not we want to employ that, we'll be in a position to release the ordinance and restart the clock with regard to the repair being done. That ordinance roughly has about a 3-month period for the owner to put a plan together, get their permits in place, about 6 months to actually start the work, and about a year to complete the work. So our goal through this process is to improve the overall flood resilience and safety of the town, and to try and do it in a constructive way where we can be done either most economically as a group or individually by the residents, based on whichever approach makes best sense. So, Brian, that was just an overview of what the plan is. Greg, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that's a great first step, because you want to learn the pluses and minuses, and I think having a subcommittee is going to get out of that and present to everybody the way you want.
And yes, sir.
No, that's finished. That was your head, yeah. Well, no, I'm going to leave it off there. We'll wait to the committee.
What do you say?
Yeah. Hey, 3 or 4, this is great.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right, on to the reading report, but we'll continue the cannabis ordinance discussion. So I know we need to start with Rich, do you want to speak to that first? I know there was a draft ordinance in there we reviewed and
Absolutely, yes, sir. So certainly appreciate what we're talking about by what questions that came up in the public comment. But there is a draft ordinance for you, and as you can see from it, there's a lot of decisions you have to make associated with this. It's divided into 3 parts. The first is the land use part, which is, that part of it is identical to what was before you last year. Where if you do something, if you have the one retail license, where it would be, which is, it's defined in the business zone. And again, this is just a draft of something that may be considered. You're not even step 1 yet. The second part is the general provisions, the restrictions you have on how it operates, the security it has, the hours of operation, how close it could be to certain other kinds of uses, accessibility, security cameras, air treatment, no consumption on site, which is the way we drafted it based upon our discussions last year. Noise pollution, signage, so forth and so on. And it also addresses the issue about how you do the local licensing, because the statutes and the regulations make clear that although the state is the final decision, the final arbiter who gets the license, you do have input by having a local license procedure, and also by the fact that in order to get a state license, any applicant that you're okay with has to show a resolution of local approval. So there's any number of factors that you can consider that you want them to submit, so you have that decision. And we supplied 2 documents on that. One is the draft ordinance, which, as I mentioned in the email, is an amalgam of other municipalities. And we also sent you the application permit that West Orange is using, which has a similar but somewhat different approach. So they would have to, and again, we kind of presaged this by what we were talking about earlier, they would have to submit, obviously, the names, the home addresses, whether they have any other cannabis licenses, they would plans from an architect, proof of where they're going to place it, a lease, and their qualifications, financial, their experience in this kind of thing, environmental impact, so forth and so on, and an opportunity for law enforcement to have input on the process. It also, that section also addresses fees for this. Obviously, you can set the fees where you want it. We took fees that we saw from other municipalities and put it in the draft. It addresses revocation of license and penalties for violation. And then the third part is the tax, which the statute sets forth what the maximum you can do is. If you do this, I don't know why you would do anything less than maximum, which is 2% of the gross receipts of each set. And in a nutshell, that's it. So you've got a lot to consider in terms of if you want to do it, and then if you want to move down that line, what kind of restrictions you want on it, and what you want from these people to determine which is the best one for you to have here in the Seabrook.
Anyone have any questions for Rich? I'm sure somebody does.
Rich, under general provisions on page 18, I'm not sure where you copy pasted this from, but on page 18, number 3, it sounds here that this is geared towards medical cannabis.
So 18
medical license, yeah, page 18, 3.
What article for?
Yeah, article.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. In that section, basically, it sounds like it's that's medical based, and I don't know if you got that just from a medical license or from recreational, but this sounds like very medical research and stuff like that.
There are no recreational, other than the existing medical facilities throughout the state, because they're the ones who have more dispensing right now recreational. So they would have.
Well, I'm just saying this reads like there's a lot of stuff in here about research and being involved somehow with medical cannabis and doing research in that. Like the business has to be involved in somehow doing some kind of studies and stuff.
I'm wondering if
it's something about doing some kind of like medical studies or stuff like that.
I'm sorry, my formatting on mine is different. That actually comes out of page 16 on mine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is one of the criteria that was used by one of the municipalities that we got. I believe this is from Highland Park, but I'm not 100% sure. That was one of the things they're considering, whether the person who, the entity that is applying has experience with medical. But obviously that can be changed if you're not.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily against that. I mean, that is a large. That's a large. That's a big piece of work that needs to be done there for a business. I mean, to be involved in the medical industry in some shape or form could be detrimental. Could be detrimental to a lot of people that are trying to get into the business.
Certainly, one of the things you might want to take out that.
That's why I'm drafting exactly. Can't point taken any, but that's what it's here for.
Well, that was one of my concerns.
Yep. No, fair enough.
And another one of the concerns was Article 6, which probably is next page over.
Number 6?
Yeah, number 6. It says the applicant's ties to the community, post-community demonstrated at least one shareholder's proof of residency in the borough for 5 or more years in the past 10 years, or at least one shareholder's continuous ownership of a business based in the borough of Seawright for 5 or more years in the past 10 years. Now, I think I have no problem with this. I think it's a good thing, but we are a very small community, so it kind of limits the
amount of applicants that we have there, and it also limits the qualifications of the applicants. We may have a resident in town that wants to start the business but has absolutely zero expertise in this, and that would kind of roll that out. Now, granted, that is only 5% of the total 100% rating issue, but that is a piece in there that I'm just concerned.
Sure. Well, it may be a good idea for everyone to take a red pencil to it. Those things don't say.
Yeah, I think probably from the process perspective, it might make some sense, to everyone who can do that, or the handling committee. Either way, individuals should go in and look at this and redline or add, et cetera, and then, consolidate.
So, Jeff, agree. How about anybody who's not in the committee submit their comments to the committee, and then the committee has its own comments, compile everything, and we'll get back to Rich for review.
Well, just in the interest of just put it out there. Two other things that weren't here that I noticed that I would like to put in here is one, hours of operation. You have to limit the hours of operation.
It was in there.
It wasn't. I kind of figured the state regulated that, but I have heard stories where some towns.
It was specific.
Okay. And then the other one that I thought of is I want to limit the applicant process to businesses that I want to basically minimize the number of big businesses that are running this. So I would like to keep it down to like, if you can't own more than 2 of these type of dispensaries, so that we don't end up with a monopoly type situation where, some big corporation comes in and owns all the dispensaries in New Jersey.
We have, and again, this is something that has to be part of the comment process. We have one of the benefits of the way the law was structured, as Mr. talked about, it provides us with considerable authority about who and where and all of those things. So it's important for that kind of feedback and other feedback to make sure that if we decide to move forward in this direction, we can put it in a box that we want. So your comments are welcome, and others. Again, it's the time to weigh in about what you think, don't like, etc. So that when we put something forward for actual consideration, it has considerable input from everyone. So I think that's a great approach.
Well, on that note, then I'd like to open up the floor to folks. There's a lot of folks here today. We don't usually get this number of people in here. I'm assuming this is one of the primary topics that you're here for. Do you have comments on things that you would like or not like to see if something were like this were to open up in town? What kind of controls do you think we should put in place as a council or as a town? Do you have anybody have any comments?
First, I want to know what town are you benchmarking right now for this? Like, is there a town that you're benchmarking? You said West Orange?
I don't know if I said the exact use of the term benchmark, I don't know what you mean, but we put together a draft based upon several municipalities. Principally, things came from Highland Park, from Freehold, and from West Orange, because they seem to have pretty comprehensive. Again, we're just trying to, what my office is trying to do for council is throw a lot of stuff into the pot so they can consider. But those are 3 that definitely we took from.
I don't think there was an implication that there's a comparator town that we're using for reference purposes.
Oh, okay.
It was for documentation purposes.
Right. Let's put it this way, those big towns have a lot more money and a lot more lawyers than we do. So we kind of use the information that they're gathering and they're pulling together to kind of pick and choose what we would like to see in our town if we were to move forward with this.
Should we have a way to one of our biggest issues has always been parking. On day one, we saw on the internet and on the news, there were lines, all that. I kept looking after that. By the 3rd day, nobody wanted to report anything about that. So it's either diminished or they're not reporting that. But one of our biggest issues, once we get into the end of this month, is parking and how this would affect it. I would like the council to consider what options we have to make parking available that doesn't impede beach access and
One of the tools that we have in the process is to have applicants, address that in detail in consultation and collaboration with us, right? Because again, in a new operation that potentially be busy, so that would be part of, I imagine, the planning board process and even our process, and understanding what that would look like, how that would be handled, etc. So that's one of the things I thought was how we would manage flow and all of that. So I imagine that whoever our particular or potential partners would be, would be that would be part of the process to address how you would handle flow and what that looks like as far as parking.
And part of the retail license too includes the delivery service. So that's where a lot of that business is going to come from.
But we don't know that. But
well, I would assume. I mean,
some of the policies that I have seen trying to look at this, almost all of them include that provision where they can deliver to their own customers. So that's one way to alleviate some of the traffic concerns and parking, that sort of thing. It's not everything, but it is a thing.
How would delivery be done without vehicles?
Sorry?
You said that delivery might alleviate the traffic concerns. I was asking how delivery would be done without vehicles.
No, not alleviate the traffic concern, alleviate the parking concern.
But how would the vehicles stop outside the dispensary without creating a parking issue? The person who's doing the delivery.
Well, I think that again, this is all part of the discussion process. But if one vehicle is coming in to pick up 38 orders, that's not 38 cars that are coming in trying to pick up their purchase. So but again, these are all good conversations, good discussion.
Richard, just to be clear on this, so the class 5 is the retail dispensary. If the class 6 is a delivery service, you have to be licensed to have. But under the class 5 license, that operator could provide delivery outside that shop to other locations.
That's my understanding.
Because that wasn't completely clear when I read through the ordinance, because there was a 5 and a 6. It seemed like it overlapped a little bit. And I think, to John's point and other people's point, we've got to be very clear on what service will actually be happening there. Is it both walk-in retail as well as delivery out of the shop?
We'll look at the definition section again and see what we need to do to clarify that.
That's my understanding too, is that if it's a retail store, it has the built-in delivery service to that retail store. I think the delivery service, or what they're referring to there, is strictly a delivery license.
Yes,
so
sir.
like kind of like an Uber Eats type of thing,
Right.
Where you're picking up from a retail store and then delivering it to someone.
If you don't have your own brick and mortar,
If you're class 6,
Right.
It's yet to be determined, but my assumption is that, assuming it's one of the existing buildings, commercial buildings downtown, we'll have the planning zone, and that'll be a component of it. But also, at a minimum, it's probably the same, which, it'll be public parking for the most part, for, I would assume, any business coming in. So you're gonna have the same, issues that even the pizzeria or restaurant or knows has. Like,
Or a liquor store to be more specific.
Exactly. I mean, there's only a fixed amount of parking downtown. You can't imagine there's an add parking anywhere, but again, it's to be determined. But that's just, I think, a safe assumption.
Excuse me, just Nicole Foley from Beach Street. In addition to like the parking issue, I'd like the town to maybe consider appointment only, so that you can control the traffic flow. I've attended recreational cannabis in the Berkshires, and even though they have a bouncer outside and appointments, there's still like lines like Disney World. Like it can be very, very crowded. And I'm concerned about lines going off into the residential streets. So in order to control kind of the amount of lines, the amount of people waiting outside, I think either appointment only or some kind of traffic flow in that respect is important.
Yeah, it's a suggestion.
And this is Owen Glenn from Church Street. I would like to also just make one other suggestion. I think to Greg's question earlier, for
the council and the town and the residents to make informed decisions, you need to have a better sense of the numbers, I think. Because I think Greg's point was, if the weed dispensary sells $2 million worth of weed a year, the town makes $40,000. And then I looked at our budget, I believe parking, we generate $650,000 a year. And our budget, I think, is $8 million, something like that. Maybe I got those numbers wrong. But it just seems like the potential earning of $40,000 or $50,000 or $60,000 if we sell $2 or $3 million worth of weed a year is just so small and just not worth the risk of, the parking and the traffic and, people coming in from different towns to buy weed in our town and things like that. So I would encourage the council to try and put together some sort of a budget based on other towns' experiences, so that we get a better informed kind of risk return discussion.
That's an excellent question. That is exactly what we are going to do. One of the challenges is that because of our area being an emerging market, our region, for cannabis, is that projections they vary greatly depending on who you talk to. And not everything, it's one of those things that, as I said before, the town will make money off it. It's a matter of degree. It's $1 million and $500,000? No, I don't think so. It will be the only business, as Kevin has said before several times, where the town actually will generate an economic benefit to the town. Now, it's 40,000, higher than that. It could be a lot higher than that, but it's not going to be zero. And in a situation where individuals are going to be making their purchases of the product anyway, if we have the opportunity to be able to have an economic benefit for our taxpayers, it's something that we should strongly consider, and we are. But part of the process is going to be determining what that financial modeling might look like. And even when we do that, it's going to be a guess like everybody else. So
the problem with that is the higher the numbers get, the bigger problems are invited into the situation that I just wanted. If you did $5 million in revenue, then all of a sudden it would be that much more traffic, that much more cars. Craig Tens at Church Street, all those other issues that would come with this. And the more successful it is in terms of revenue generated for the borough, the more the other factors come into play. They're not mutually exclusive, they're actually you run concurrent. That's the problem.
Yeah,
Greg Tens at Church Street.
I saw your name up there, so I was just trying to say.
There was construction going on in the house that came on.
What we've seen in the past, we've had some business performance come in the past, last year, this year, we've had our own projections, which isn't exactly scientific, but we have seen some projections, the other things too. And
does anybody project more than 5 million? Anybody? Their wildest dreams.
Yes, they would. For the year?
Yeah. Imagine what that traffic would be. Imagine what that parking would be like. I guess, I'll just conclude this, and I don't want to do it all the time. I want to know what the process is to stop the process. Everything here is about tailoring the ordinance to put checks and balances in, so we're okay with that idea, as opposed to how do we stop a bad idea. Now, I'm not, by virtue of all the people that are here, I'm relatively new to town, so I wasn't here for all the meetings last year. That's what I want to know as the representatives. If individuals want to get behind stopping this, forget what the ordinance says. Who doesn't want the ordinance? I was interested in that process.
One resident came to me recently, person with very nameless, but they asked about this suggestion. So, one possibility would be, referendum vote.
Yes.
Yes. That's what, and I said, yes. I mean, it happened when we had bonds for these buildings. I know it's just an animal, but we wanted to have the bonds for this building.
That's fair.
So we were in favor, so residents put together and went to a referendum vote.
Yeah, Mayor, I just believe that a vote for legalizing in the state, which I certainly was in favor for, is very different. In other words, I'm also for the Second Amendment, but I don't want to link to a shooting range. Right? Those are two different points. So the fact that we're quoting the state as saying we want to legalize it, I agree with that.
Yeah.
It's saying that we want it here, those are two different questions. So I think the referendum.
Yeah, I say that in the past too, but a few of us have that. The state voted to approve the use of marijuana versus having we know it's different.
Yeah.
And also, and I don't know if you have everyone, but I think it isn't one-dimensional for most of the governing body, that it's just a revenue grab, because, and this is an opinion, but I don't think, the 2% that's there right now, 5, 10, 15 years.
What are the other virtues of the revenue for this public body?
It's just a viable business, it's just a viable business for, from the council members I've spoken with, it's just, since it's legal now, like, would they want to allow it or not? So it's just the fact it's actually an active business in town, that could be a productive, that's what I've heard from the council members.
My name is Gregory Hartwell, North Beach Seabright. It seems to me that the council has unofficially or are leading forward to going forward with a cannabis place in town. Is that the fix, or that?
Well, that's what we're here to discuss.
We're down into the bowels of the discussion where it may be a moot point because I haven't heard the council members. I hear them all seem to be positive rather than positive negative. A referendum would be a very good thing. Is the council in favor of it now? Has there been a straw vote or anything?
Well, I don't speak for myself. I personally am in favor of it, but I mean, everybody, the rest of the council can be. Everybody seems to be on the fence.
Is there a driving force?
For me, it's strictly. For me, it's specifically the revenue. I mean, it's one business in town. It's the only business, like Jeff said, and I've said a number of times. It's the only business in town that potential business in town that would ever make money on.
Yeah, are you really making money, or is it just increasing income and not evaluating the expenses and all and putting it together?
Well, in comparison to the 22 liquor licenses we have in town, I have a feeling, I personally, we have 22 liquor licenses in this town. And in comparison to that, I feel that this is going to be a lot less detrimental to the health and safety of the folks in town than that would be.
Yeah, is there a need for it? I mean, if you made $100,000 a year, is that enough to make you go forward? Has the police department had any comments to say how much it costs, or is there another policeman involved because there are more people in town? And you might find out that you're spending more money than you're making.
Well, that
analysis been developed yet, or has been stuff my premature asking?
Well, no, you're not premature asking. I mean, those are exactly the kind of analysis that needs to be done, that will be done. Like I said before, we are for those who are concerned that the cake is baked. I think it's a year, but that's not.
Yeah, but when you come in and you hear the ordinance being edited, you kind of feel like
Please, you're taking the floor. Has the police department be asked to put in a recommendation? Does they have any comments? You talk about parking. I think the new theory in town, come on down and enjoy our town, but bring your own parking space. That's where we are. You can't move it up and down the town now, and it's old. It's from here to Asbury Park. It's all one road. And you can't.
One comment I would say about the meeting, I just baking a cake already. I think it was done last year, because this has been a conversation in so many public meetings.
No, it's back on the table.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's the point. And
well, because the numbers we're starting to see our initial reason we held off to this point is we didn't have numbers. We didn't have any hard facts. The state is still kind of on the fence of what their decision.
Are you allowed to sell the license? Is the license go out for bid?
No, but that's one of the things. I don't think the state allows that.
Okay. So at the bottom line, if you got 100,000 or 200,000, is that enough to cover additional expenses that may or may not be added because it's a hypothetical number against another hypothetical number?
Yeah, that's part of the analysis, and you're asking the questions.
Shouldn't we be doing that now before we're talking about going into all the paperwork and the legal costs, the program? No sense doing that unless you have a decision that's looking very positive with council.
Right, can I respond?
Yes, sir.
So while it may not seem to be the case, the council is not presently on the path to approval of this ordinance. I for one, am not in favor of it. And there are other people on the council who are not. Okay. But let me just finish. Right? My understanding is last year, they brought this forward and the council decided to defer it to a year. which is about where we are. Right? There were those of us, including myself, who believe there are too many unanswered questions to know whether or not this is right for the town. So what this is about is in a prior meeting, a request was made to legal to put together a draft ordinance so we could have conversations about this. If we were going to do this, what would it look like? And then ultimately bring that back to the public and give them a chance to comment on it, which is exactly what's happening today. And I think we're all encouraged by the fact that there's a lot of people, in fact, 100% more people than we usually have, right? 100% more, which means this is a very important and controversial topic. And hopefully everybody on the call and everybody in the room stays connected to this, because as we work through the process, we want to make sure there's 100% transparency. And in the end, if there is overwhelming support on the council to do it, to override the no votes, then the public has to speak. They have to speak to the council members to make their concerns known. The last thing I'll say is very often in cases like this, it goes to a referendum. Because people want to be able to speak and vote on this in their particular way.
Maybe the referendum is the first place to start.
Well, the sense is, again, I'm not in favor of this, the sense is we're further along than we actually are. And the fact that we're viewing a draft document by no means that this council has voted in favor of moving forward.
Thank you for your time.
And one of the things, like going back to last year, for instance, one of the many things we did is we gave it to our zoning official, and she did a thorough review of all the information available at the time. So we got feedback from our professionals. So it's definitely a work in progress. This is
I can definitely see that. But it's just a matter when you have too much work going on now before a decision was made, doing a straw vote, so to speak. Whether it be a vote from the residents or owners in Seabright, or whether it be council, that would be your decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jorge Peninsu. I'm a resident at 1A Churches. I see the amount of revenue that you guys talking about is $40,000 that you're gonna net from this deal. How about we start charging for the entrance at the beach at 7 o'clock in the morning? Because I see a lot of people coming in at 7 o'clock in the morning that they don't pay for the beach. Same thing with parking, like Pure Water. Pure Water has that option. I think we can make 40,000 easy by parking on people. And we have less police issues.
Well, and one of the things I've said in the past too is to look beyond this 2% projected revenue gain for us, because that's, in my opinion, going to evaporate at some point, and then businesses remain. The rules are going to change quite a bit over time. I think marijuana is probably here to stay, but I also think whatever rules we see, one per town or 2% revenue gain for the town, I think all that, of course, will change over time. So that's why I have suggested that public consider beyond the revenue gain, the whole idea of actually just having this in town, because whatever happened with those factors, everything else will change down the road.
We're only talking about revenue. We got to find other ways to make revenue.
We're doing that. We've done loads of things.
Charge at 7 o'clock for each.
We could, but my point is, I don't think that's going to offset. That's going to change the conversation in our governing body whether or not to do this personally. If we found out ways to make revenue, say paid parking, we came into it, we projected maybe making 100 a year, 75 a year, now we're making 600 a year. But I don't think that changes the conversation they're having on whether or not to have a marijuana shop. It's my opinion. And it's.
What was the feedback from the chiefs on this project? What was the chief's feedback on this project?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Regarding
Feedback
regarding having a cannabis shop in town, do you have any feedback?
Well, you know what? I have mixed reviews on it. It hasn't been too many problems in other towns, so I want it to be right. Either way, we're going to have marijuana in Seabright. They're going to be having it delivered to the beach. They're going to be having it delivered to the bars. They're going to be smoking on the sidewalks. Or he's stopping people driving in their cars. They can't do anything about it. So I'm not really. I kind of want to stay neutral. I want to see how it goes. Good the towns are handling it with the crowds. It's just an unknown for us. We've never had anything like this. Do I think having a bar that lets out at 2 o'clock in the morning and I have 1,000 drunk people on the sidewalk, it's going to be different in a place that people are buying weed from? It's totally different. I think with the marijuana, I think the parking, it's gonna be more of a daytime thing. I don't really know what we're gonna have the lines. It's something I don't know too much about. I'm trying to speak to some of the other chiefs in the other towns that have it in their town, but they have a lot more issues going on. I don't, it's an unknown for us. This is gonna be new for me. Like I said, we can handle the alcohol. We got this, it's busy, so to add weed in the daytime, I'm not really sure how it's gonna be in the lines. It's just something I haven't seen yet. I'd rather have the input from the people downtown, if it's gonna be downtown. To make you guys happy, then I don't make them happy, they'll make me unhappy. That's really my opinion on it. I just want to see how it goes. I just want to see how the other towns are working it, and if I like what I see and I think it's controllable, do it. If I don't like what I see, you're going to get my opinion from the council and the public safety committee and the mayor.
You know, one of the things that I think is proven is the nature of our town is very compact compared to other towns. So whatever we do here, whatever the decision is, it will spill into areas a little bit different. It'll spill down the side street, whatever the case will be. My sense on this, and Heather said it, is prudence would be to see how this plays out. Give it a little bit of time. I think the points are well taken. It's going to be in town whether we want it or not. If it's going to be here anyway, is there a benefit to the town from a revenue perspective, and can it be effectively managed? But with so many unknowns at this point in time, I think the appropriate thing to do, listen to the residents' concerns, consider that when we make our decision, but most likely kick the can forward. Is there a risk in doing that? There is a risk that you could lose out on a license because they become less available over time. In my mind, the risks of not knowing how it'll play out and the impact on our small town is greater than the reward of trying to move forward quickly.
Yeah.
That's my view.
I mean, thank you for mentioning that. I mean, what I'm hearing today is there's a lot that we don't know on many levels from many people. So what is the harm in learning more and kicking the can down the line? I think what's great, I respect that everyone needs to start doing ordinances or putting things in place should it prove out that it makes sense and there's not so much risk and the revenue potentially is worth it or not. So having a plan and how you want to move forward on this topic makes a ton of sense. Understanding if a referendum comes in play as part of that process. I think knowing that people in town is engaged is wonderful. And just being, communicating it. I think staying involved in council meetings is great. It shows people are involved, but also maybe communicating what a plan is on the site. Like, this is where we are. This is the next step. Keeping it just kind of top line so people know where we are.
Well, to your point, that's one of the things that we're doing. One of the reasons why we're doing this now is to get our ducks in a row. Because every day, more and more numbers come in, more and more facts come in, more and more information comes in. The chief gets information. Everybody gets more information every single day. The longer we push this process out of fine-tuning, getting our ordinance tuned up and ready for you guys to put in front of you guys for a referendum vote, the longer that process goes. So if we wait for everything, if we wait, first of all, we're never going to get all the facts. Even because they're constantly going to be changing. So the further we put it out, the longer this process takes. So to kind of get in front of it, I'm not saying we're not saying that we're going to vote on this next Tuesday, but we need to start the process somewhere. And yes, we are, to your point, sir, we are spending money to do this, but eventually it's going to get done, and we may throw this away because the town may say no, but at least we had the information ironed out and patched out so that everybody, the council members had their say, the town had their say, we put all that into here, and we put it out for a vote. And that's the best we can do. And that's all we can do.
Yeah, and I don't know what Heather said, what Urban said, it doesn't mean my point too is that we have a decent sized audience today, which is great. But do your best to check in every public meeting we have. The agendas are online. Go to our website. Because we have not just this, we have school regionalization discussions that are very consequential to town. So we don't want to keep their blindsided. This has not been an ongoing discussion for us. We feel like this cannabis discussion has been ongoing because we've had so many public meetings. And so last year we could have easily acted on it. A lot of the towns did, but we did. We spunked it. All right, we're doing it in years. The state takes out from the state, so the towns implement this. So that's why we feel like it has been a long, slow work in progress compared to other towns. But I would just say keep checking the agendas because we have a lot of very consequential things being discussed at most public meetings we have. So get the time up dial in and, see what's relevant and come to participate.
Just an observation. Are you here?
Yeah.
I want to affirm the positivity of that comment, if I may, and in general, a sense I have of the council, as someone who kind of see right. I was feeling from you that you want to make things, at least you want to explore to the fullest that you can. And I sort of walk away from these meetings with a sense of can do. Like there was this talk, can the fireman's fair take place? Yes, we're going to make it happen. Can the fireworks? Yes, we're going to make it happen. And I so appreciate that you're willing to explore your open-mindedness. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to add a second what Rowan talked about in your comment there. There's definitely not a consensus from the council. We haven't taken any straw votes or anything like that. I'm right now negative to it. I just think there are too many unanswerable questions. That's just, if New Jersey goes this way, as they're going, maybe 10 years from now, there'll be a conclusion that this worked, and the other things didn't work. And then there's going to be a time to try and repair the damage. I, for myself, right now, would be a no vote unless a considerable amount of additional information is presented. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, just to clarify, so what Jack said, I say in the past about with every body is not necessarily, we've had like straw votes or straw polls to continue the conversation. So majority said yes to continue the conversation. If it was like last year, it went up for a vote, it probably would have been no, so there's no like the process. But so I would say it has been discussed. And there has been a majority who wants to continue the conversation for Guy. Just to clarify.
If I can say, since the beginning of the talks, I'm an IT guy, so I'm all over the internet. But there's so much conflicting information that, this side says this is why it's so good to move forward here, and for every point, why you want to do that. So it's not like we have a research capability to find what's reality, right? So time is important. My biggest concern is if it was to happen, are we prepared? And we need to be prepared, even if it doesn't open here, that it will come into town because it's legal. Right? When I read on the internet, it says that a vote for the referendum that passed this was a vote to say it's okay in your town. Now, I don't know that that's true. It's another, article that was on the internet that I can't determine is it factual or not. So it's that conflicting information is the worst part. It's almost better if we didn't have it and you could really look at the facts that you have. But I want to make sure if it ever happens here that we're prepared, right? How is it going to be enforced? There's no enforcement for somebody that's overindulged to evaluate that with any reasonable amount of time. Cannabis stays in your body for days. So if I did it 3 days ago and you pull me over today, am I an offender or not? So there's so much more that it opens up that it's probably, well, I also read that the federal government has a treaty that says the United States cannot make it legal as a country. I don't know that to be true. I know I read it on the internet. So I think we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, that's what she said. I mean, weeds are already here. That's it's all right. It's been around town, depending on where you are. So yeah, it's already legal.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
I have one more question. If there was a vote today, who's for it and who isn't?
I don't know if it's an appropriate question. Feel free to speak to it.
Based on what we had today, I don't think we could get that consensus.
I think there would have been a vote today had there been, people knew that we had enough information to vote on it. Because I think majority of customers already had an answer. I mean, you can speak freely to anyone, but that's why we haven't voted on it. It's been consideration for since it was legalized.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak for myself as right now I'm for it, but once the facts start coming in, that might change my mind. I mean, it's all it is up in the air. I mean, it is a moving target too. It's a moving target as we're looking at this. And like I said, every day new numbers come in, so that focus shifts every day. So
and everyone's aware too. I mean, the biggest concern that one of the biggest concerns over is that, it's legal statewide, and we all know that the majority voted in favor of that, having a small shop downtown is good for the map. So everyone's aware of that. It's definitely a consideration.
And even if we got this whole ordinance, we ironed it out, we got all our ducks in a row, we're fully prepared, we got everything ready to go, we put it out in front of you guys for a referendum, you all vote yes on it, the state comes around and goes, sorry, no license. So regardless of the fact, we don't make the final decision, the state does. So we can put our best candidate in front of the state, but the state makes the final decision. They may just shoot it down and say no, so,
And how many candidates are there?
Right now, we don't know that number.
We don't have a number because the process by which we advertise for candidates and the value of the candidates is not even determined yet. So as we said earlier on, we are very early in the process. This is a process. And so nothing is imminent. I mean, John talked about the internet. The internet's a dangerous place. Because there's been a lot of information thrown out there about this and that, and all of it is wrong. All of it. So it's if you want facts and information, come here, right? So and we will endeavor to do our best to inform, communicate, put things out, etc. So people aren't just talking. If you want the facts, come to the governing body, eventually the planning board, etc. We're the source of actual information, right? So and that's how the vote is taken.
Yeah, my response to your question, first of all, I think it's a fair request to understand where we sit as council members. Last year when I campaigned, I spoke to a lot of people. And to be honest with you, when I asked the question, it was about 50-50. Which means it comes down to what is the will of the town? What does the town want to do to have that voice? And there's probably a lot of people who aren't here today who are in favor of it. So we have to be fair and listen to all sides on this. For me personally, I think we have to keep an open mind because this is an evolving situation. Its impact on our small town are too large for us to recognize at this time. I think we should wait and see what happens, and because of that, I will vote no.
I have a question. A little related to the business itself. Are they allowed to deposit their funds? And my name is Louis Andreas. I live on Peninsula Avenue. If the dispensary or whatever dispensary in New Jersey, are they allowed to deposit their funds into banks? Or have they been permitted to do that?
I don't know what I read online, which, as John said, take with a grain of salt. But there are banks that are not federally funded that they are depositing their money in. So that's the catch all there. It's the federal funding because it's not legal federally. They technically can't put it in a federally funded bank. So that's how we're getting around.
But there are, for instance, there are many institutions that are handling this. So one of the things, and again, the conversation is good because we just talk about things, right? So one of the things that a lot of folks think is that there's piles of cash everywhere, laying around, etc. And that's certainly what has been the case in a lot of cases. But there are now a handful of things, in New Jersey alone, that will take account of these funds, right? So that's as the industry moves forward, it improves, it's tighter. Regulators get a better handle on things. New businesses come in to fill gaps where there are risk management issues, etc. It's evolving in the right direction, right? So that's a great question. There was a time when nobody was touching it. So those days are gone.
And I just want to make a correction. I said federally funded and federally insured.
Right. And one other thing we had too, so we've had a number of, we have a process in place to accept applications. That's a long way off, never happens, but we had potential cannabis business owners come in and state their interest. So we had had quite a few say their interest and tell us why and even give us some rough numbers and so forth. So that's when they answer that more fully that we haven't been approached by potential business owners, but there is no process.
Originally, I was very intrigued by the revenue opportunity that we don't have from other places, but there are places. I get that, and as the gentleman said. The other side that I read is where's the money go? Right? Does it have to go to a specific account, safety, for handling of this matter, or does it go in a general fund? We haven't even discussed anything like that. And so to me, all of that is keep the reins on it and be prepared, be open-minded, because we don't really know by this audience, which is amazing, right? I don't think we've had this many people attend a meeting since Paul Sandy's in that matter.
Well, the door ordinance.
Right, and so that's good, because the people need to speak. If you look on the website, every one of our contact information is there, phone numbers or emails, what have you. Make sure that we're hearing from everybody that we can to influence us that way. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else have any comments for any of us? Anyone online? This is open up. All right, let's see.
This is Becky Gwen from 10 Church Street. Thank you for all the comments. I heard a few times on the call today that there's an idea that because it's going to be in town anyway, that's a rationale for considering it as a revenue opportunity. And I think that these are apples and oranges discussions. I just want to put my perspective out there. You know, the idea that the state has approved it, and so that's why we should be considering it anyway, doesn't make any sense to having a magnet shop in town and taking on all this unknown risk without really understanding what the impact will be, you know, on the community. And so I just want to urge, again, the council to put together that business case to really understand if this is coming down to revenue, what this really means, and if there's not other avenues in terms of, you know, increasing parking tickets or paying fines for cigarettes on the beach, just any other ways that are, you know, don't have the same risk concerns, you know, and unknowns associated to bring that revenue in. So really appreciate the council bringing that information forward. And I don't think we should keep, you know, saying that the fact that it's approved by the state is a reason to consider it in the town, because the role of having a physical building in the town that brings all this attention in for that purpose. You know, let people go to Red Bank or Highlands to go get their weed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I think that's a wrap on the
Hi, this is Eric White from Surf Street.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Just wanted to, Eric White from Surf Street.
Okay.
Just wanted to echo what Becky said. Yeah, I don't think that just because it's legal that we should be opening a pot shop and inviting everyone to come by here. I like to sit on my porch and enjoy the sunsets at happy hour. Don't really want to have to deal with the crowds walking down the street and smoking and things of that nature. I think that we're very much a family town here and very tight, close-knit community, and I think that this would have a very negative impact. And one more thing, everyone keeps talking about the revenue and $2 million in sales, but this all seems to be based on only having 12 shops in the state of New Jersey. So what's going to happen a year from now if there's 100 licenses issued and 100 shops? Is the revenue going to fall by 50%? And now we're doing all this just for $20,000 instead of $40,000. So I think that's something else we need to consider.
All right, thanks for your comments. Anybody else? All right, thanks again, everybody. That was number 5 on the agenda, so we can move on to number 6, which is pedestrian and traffic conflicts. I believe, Jack, you want to speak to this?
We're not sure what you included in it.
I left it open because you talked about 2 or 3 issues. One was on access to the splash pad and the potential that Rich has been looking into. Greg has been looking at crossing concepts, so I left it kind of open, whatever.
I wasn't sure. Just on the initial focus was up Shrewsbury Way, where there's a designated DOT approved pedestrian crosswalk. The question came up from residents. They want to unify the east side, basically East Ocean Avenue, between the curb and the seawall. And then we got into questions of who owns all of that land, and more specifically, were there any easements recorded? And we're still working with our attorney to identify specific easements were actually given. The easements as we read them, would effectively say the public can cross over, but the property owner is not going to be held liable unless they do something extraordinarily stupid. You know, they dig a ditch and they leave it uncovered and somebody falls in it, that sort of thing. And in normal operating circumstances, the property owner over which this pathway is crossing would not be held liable for any type of accidents. And that's what we're looking for, to confirm that, so that we can talk to these residents and get a comfortable level here. The other thing is, what and who do we maintain these pathways? Some of them are well maintained, others are, you gotta watch your step, the rocks and broken curbing, etc. So again, this is all coming to a point here where we'll get some legal direction, we can talk to the owners, and then we can decide among ourselves, does the town want to pick up the maintenance of these pathways, or do we leave that to the private residents? So that's the subject. It is clear, what is clear is there is public access without restriction to the splash pad. That's clear. And property owners are given reasons for that. So the pathways between the curb and the seawall, that's still an open issue. On the other point, talking with our engineer, we've all talked about the obvious safety factors that have now come into place at the foot of the Highland Bridge. If you're coming down that bridge, I'm telling you my own experience, there's a great tendency just to look out at the horizon and say, boy, look at that ship, look at this fishing boat, the sun and all that. And the next thing you know, you're doing 50 miles an hour going down that curve. And right at the base, right there, there's an exit from the Sandy Hook Park. There's a restaurant. There's a commercial fishing operation behind the restaurant. And there's now a condo complex. So there are going to be a lot of people going into those parking areas, exiting those parking areas, both from the south lane and the north lane. And there are going to be pedestrians crossing Ocean Avenue to get to the beach. And then you get the bike racks coming into it. So it's a dangerous area. Working with our engineers, trying to come up with, and also our police chief, trying to come up with a combination of signage and flashing lights, etc. The complication factor is it's a DOT highway, and you can't even put up a sign without getting DOT approval. So we're working through this process. Our engineers come up, I think, an idea I hadn't heard before, it's not owned by the chief, about putting flashing light on the south side of the road, but the light will be facing the northbound traffic right away through the bridge.
I just want to give you about the rumble strip.
And then, yeah, we're trying to formulate several options before we talk to them, because I don't want to just go with the rumble strips and they say no. So one of the things I think we want to have several options there, because I think we got to look at early warning lights to get people's attention if you're coming into a different area. Rumble strips may work, they may not. DOT's not usually in favor of them, especially on a downslope. But there's well, just from a slope point of view. Because when it's wet, all of a sudden you're taking your tires off the road and it's raining in. But that's the biggest concern is early warning stuff.
We've already been turned down by them for a couple of signs.
Okay, there's a Seabright sign. You want to put a Seabright sign, we're going to walk the Seabright on the road.
Yeah. Because one of the things we're looking at, I think, is putting a flashing yellow light, just so a flashing light, reduce speed limit at the south side of the pedestrian ramps crossing up over the bridge that goes over the highway. And that's just as you come down and you're kind of turning south, that's where your eyes are kind of pointing to. So if we get a flashing there, at least it warns people that there's something changing. And the big concern also is with the new development there. We're going to probably have to make sure we force pedestrians to the south of the existing crosswalk. We certainly don't want another crosswalk to the north closer to that bridge. So that's going to be a big challenge.
What about painting, warnings in the street itself, slow down, let's take another chain, blah, 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 whatever.
Too many of those is a similar problem with wet. When the pavement is wet and you have too many, a We discussed a little bit, that paint is slippery than a baby. And especially on that slope, when you're trying to make people slow down and grab these helping them in the first place. It's a tough spot.
And we discussed writing that, blinking lights and signage, that's where you go. That'll be helpful.
Because it's alerting, it alerts people, there's something different coming on a flashing light. Even if they just take their foot off the accelerator, we win. Yeah, it's something, and people coming down there, help them kill it. You're not paying attention to the road if it's a beautiful day. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure everybody does. So we are looking at various things, and we come up with a couple of solutions, we will go to DOT.
Yeah, I'm always checking the waivers.
Yeah.
Jack's the one dropping 50 miles an hour. Very sure.
Just to add, the chief recently acquired a small portable speed monitoring signage that we can.
It's going to come out this weekend.
Hopefully you might see it then on Ocean End this weekend, but it's that's an eye catcher. That flashing light, and you can move it. A week here, move it down the road, and I think that'll help a lot. Just to say, it's a work in progress with our engineer.
All right, so you're back to us on the future updates.
Oh, yeah. But if we're putting it on high priority.
One of the other things I want to bring up is, since you're on pedestrians, Chief, can we put out the cones again?
Oh, yeah.
At the crosswalks, because we're getting people passing on the right, and so they're stopping for pedestrians, and then somebody goes past on the right and hits us.
No, that was
Appreciate that.
I hugely appreciate that last year on the New Street and then before Peninsula, because that's where everyone's cars.
Well, just, everywhere. Just all any crosswalks here and there. Yeah, we'll do it. There's room to pass on the right, they're doing it.
That was so helpful last year. Thank you.
The other thing is to focus on is bicycles. If you're riding a bike, or you have especially children, it's causes when you see young kids riding bikes at night, no lights, no reflective clothing. And you can afford parents to not paying attention here, because the margin of error is maybe 3 feet, and you're in trouble. So trying to get some signage up again on areas where it's out last year, where alerts for bike riders and pedestrians. And the other factor with the bike riders and the government is they have to stop the pedestrians also. And many times they go right through the pedestrian crosswalks. If you get hit by a bike, a good friend of mine's aunt, her husband retired, they went to Europe for a nice tour, and they were in Amsterdam. She stepped off the curb and got hit by a guy flying on a bike. They had an air back to the States, and she was never the same accident. The guy was drinking. So, just an example, if you hit by a bike who's going 25, 30 miles an hour, you're likely going to end up in the hospital.
Well, the other thing, the kids on the bike, it's kids on the sidewalk on their bikes. And I mean, I know it's tough riding through downtown, but, if your kids are on bikes, tell them to walk on the sidewalk if they're going to be there. This is really
That's why
thanks, Jack. Thanks, Rick. To be continued. All right, on to Greg's another one for you guys. We to the NJDOT state aid program for next year. We covered like road paving and other projects.
The specific one that's attached to your agenda is not really road paving, that's a separate thing, that's a transportation trust fund. This is actually a safe streets and transit grants. If you look at the choices of, mostly these are trying to connect modes of transportation like busing. If you have a train station or bus lane, you want to make sidewalks or bike lanes to those spots, so it eliminates car traffic. The only thing that would really apply to us in this would be bikeways and sidewalks. If you wanted to, for pedestrian safety, get cars off the street, if you want to put bike lanes in, we already have Ocean Avenue, except for the downtown area. You can look at that. That's a really tough spot for bikes.
Well, that's one thing I always wanted to do in town is, I've always taken on the idea of doing bike rentals and stuff like that, whether they're pedals or electric or what have you. The biggest section of that has always been designated bike roads from the bridge north, you got nothing. So I would like to explore that option, just to get designated. And I know that the striping that's supposed to be starting in the fall, I believe they're going to narrow the lanes and actually put in a bike lane, supposed to going up the north end. So that will absolutely help that situation. So I'm all for a full bike lane all the way through town. designated and marked just for that reason, because that will connect us to the primary hubs, the primary transportation hubs in Highlands for the C Street, and Long Branch for the train. So, and even so far as Red Bank and Ralston, the train and Ralston and Red Bank. So,
If you get an intent, it'll give you the ability pretty much to ride from the Sandy Hook Bridge all the way down to the market.
yeah.
Because that bike is
It's open. It's
That's the ultimate goal.
And we discussed these things with repaving and restriping on North Beach. I personally think it's a good idea. I'd rather narrow car lanes and make the little bike lane instead of continue to town. It's really, because otherwise, you bottleneck downtown and you said,
They're going to ride. If you paint the north side, they're going to ride. So we're going to have to make allowances to get them through the center town.
Sure, yeah.
All right, I'll come up with some ideas. And we'll talk.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yes.
Also, the road repaving grants are available now. Greg is meeting with Dave to review them. We've been successful almost every year. We do have an existing grant to do Peninsula Avenue, and that'll be done whenever Greg gets around to it. So,
we have two other roads too? Or, I thought we got three over there.
There was 3 suggested, DOT approved one.
We approved one?
Yeah, they gave you money for Peninsula Avenue. Osborne and Embry were also part as separate applications.
I thought New Street was in there too.
Well, New Street was actually part of the grant that was giving you paving money for Peninsula, but I don't have access to the website yet, working it out. But it says there's some kind of drainage improvement on New Street, which is not paving. I just got to find out what that is, because we already did a drainage improvement there to solve that problem.
Well, because we did that pool at the corner there.
Yeah, that's cool.
So this will be on your next workshop.
Did they fix that? When did they fix that? Oh, okay. I didn't see it.
I haven't
seen a heavy rain.
The western end of that? Yeah, the western end at that puddle is over.
Oh, not the western end. So that's Surf Street. Not Surf Street. On New Street at the corner by Rotary's, it doubles.
Yeah, that's probably what the grant was for. I have to get into the right, because there's some drainage improvement as part of that. I don't know the value of it yet.
Okay.
But next month I'll have that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
all right, on to number 8, text my gov. So I spoke to Joe about this. So this is basically and Joe and I believe John will speak to this, but it's essentially a small $2,000 a year fee, I believe, to have this program where there's just a notification system. You can have sort of you can text it and we'll have automated responses to a lot of the commonly asked questions relevant to Seabright. But Joe, do you want to speak to that in more detail?
John, please jump in. It was just a product that came to our attention. It's interesting. It seems like a good product. I don't know, but they have the ability to back and forth between residents. One, it can be used as a notification to residents. Everybody is online. Everybody's holding one of these now.
Yeah, so Candace Mitchell and I attended a meeting with the vendor. It basically, the same way you text to your friends and family, there would be a number for Seabright. If you opt in, you put your number in there, and then any notifications that go out. Right now, we do use the Nixle for when we need to get something out, but this would take care of that. You have the ability to go in, if you type in parking, it would open up from a computer what's available to you from a parking perspective. If you want to know what day the trash is, so any question you have that the system already knows the answers to, you would get a response immediately. You don't have to call or talk to anyone.
Well, see, that's the question I have. Usually these systems are reliant on actual data being available. Who's been putting that data into the system? Are they doing that?
Well, we have our ordinance, again, they would take care of all of that setup. It would be customized for what our needs are. So
surprisingly, when I saw the demonstration, 80% of the questions are universal.
Right.
They said, what day is my trash picked up? It went right to there in the town. They'll just have to say Mondays and Thursdays. That's the only.
What's the cost?
It's $12,000 a year.
The first year, there's also the $1,500
to set it up.
What do we pay for Nixle, Chief?
It's about, I think about $2,500 a year, $3,000 a year.
But the other thing is,
I can get you the exact figure.
It's just different. The Nixle is more emergency directed,
But I'm saying, if this one can do that, can we, people kind of.
Yeah, I wouldn't eliminate it. So the other side is you as a resident, if you ask the question and it's not in the database, that they build up front that kind of question goes to these three people in the operation, right? So it was a clerk thing, and Chris would get an email or a text message, and it would also list the other people that are in that group, and then they'd be accountable to make sure that you get your answer. So the answers that aren't AI, we'll call it, right, would be attended to by someone, Public Works question, it's going to go to the Public Works Director, or they're going to get back to you. It also gives us metrics. How many questions were for Public Works? Maybe we need to look at what's going on in Public Works and make an improvement of how we respond to those kind of things. If it's for council meeting information, then you have metrics on a regular basis, real time, of all the questions that come in, where do they go, did they get answered in a timely fashion. That puts us a little bit more on top of the game, because I think a lot of times things come up here, there's no record of it. You want to go back and listen to the audio for a meeting, yeah, it's there. But this will give us some metrics at the end of the month. This is what came in, there were 12, the answer is 7, we're still only 5.
and we'd like to think they go to the website, but a lot of people just don't go to our website.
Our website, it's like, and then you drink. Go to the website.
So I don't know if you guys would all like the demonstration, maybe in another comment.
I'd like to see it. Yeah, I'd like to see it.
Okay.
I would definitely do the demo for us.
Yeah. I mean, it's like anything else, right? You gotta keep it there, otherwise it becomes outdated.
Yeah.
And then people get frustrated when they say, how do you know this? So besides doing it, we've got to make sure we've got a refresh and update methodology that's gonna work.
Well, the product is different than what I've seen at other seminars, conventions and things like that. And you can imagine that, everybody's going with their phones now, so.
Right now, we don't have a Facebook interaction.
Yeah.
And this wouldn't replace that because it's not going to be community-minded broadcast. It's going to be, you ask the question, you're going to get the answer. So that's a little bit different.
That's nice. Well,
by the way, you could go to their website too, if in the interim.
Yeah,
and just take a quick look at it.
I don't think any of us want to have Facebook become a methodology by people understanding what's happening in town. It's not the place to do that. Okay? But the other side of the equation is you can hear a clamoring from our residents for more information gotten more easily than they're able to get. I mean, a meeting this time of day is very hard for a lot of people to get to because they're working. And in the evenings, they've got child commitments and everything else. Anything that we can do to allow people to actually have more insight into what's going on and more information, I think would be a great thing. And the other thing is a lot of our homeowners in town that pay taxes don't live here full time. So for them to get to these events is difficult. There's an electronic method to do it, and it's effective and up to date. I think it's a great idea.
And it's like a form of marketing, honestly. And you try a little bit of everything. There's a website, texting, Facebook, all that stuff combined.
Yeah,
and you have to do the best, getting information as best as possible.
But I think that Earl makes a good point in that, too much is weighed on Facebook and a lot of people, anything we can do to get away from that and get to a more official form of communication is a good thing.
Yeah.
I've
always agreed with that. I mean, Facebook, if you go to all about Seabright, I think it says something, most of the people are not Seabright. And it's like a gossip thing, and so. Agreed.
All right, I'll arrange for a demonstration if you want to go there. The parking ordinance, Mayor, next. We left off a couple of side streets in North Beach that we have to. There were a couple of streets missing that are not permanent, but
the residential permit parking designation.
that's mostly just no parking on one side of the street and things of that nature.
The bottom half of this, not appear on the ordinance that you introduced, but has to be reintroduced.
What is water use? Well, I was there last night, so I see the new signs at the point, right? That's cool.
The north side.
When I turn around and come back out, is it the whole slide of this?
Just the north side on Water.
Just the north side.
It was a cut and paste issue. That's all it was, and I did it actually.
Sorry, perfect.
It was a cut and paste.
And it's all in there.
Yeah.
Hold on.
So just to be clear on this point, right, because a lot of the work is gone into this, when does it become official?
20 days after the second reading and public hearing.
20 days after the second reading. And when is the second reading?
Unless we have a special meeting, it won't be till mid-June.
So, hold on, Pave to Park goes into effect on Sunday. You can still, you'll still be out ready to parking meters.
Right.
I'm talking about the revised penalties, which we, as a group, collectively committed to do everything we could to have in place by Memorial Day weekend.
Yes.
We can.
Correct.
We can.
Can we introduce it as is? Can we approve it as is and then amend it later?
You can amend, you've already introduced, you've advertised and posted. Is it, and it's set for the next meeting?
We can adopt it as is, I suppose.
That's what the question
and then
is.
amend it later.
Adopt what we have as
The
is.
125 was approved by the judge, month and a half, 2 months ago,
So why don't we do that? Why don't we adopt it as is, and we can amend it for any minor error that was made because of cut and paste?
The other option is, you can absolutely do that, and that's the cleanest way, but the other option, just so you know, you can amend it at the next meeting, and then have a special meeting a week later to adopt the amendment. So you instead of adopting the ordinance at the next meeting, you amend it, and then you have a special meeting to adopt as amended. But that requires a 7-day.
Option A sounds pretty good.
Is worth it, I think, at this point.
I would agree.
Right. So adopt it as is.
Yes.
And then amend it.
And the amendment,
Can we
later,
introduce a new amendment Tuesday night also?
Well, that's the process I just described. If you,
But it's
you
not
want to
ordinance.
introduce a new ordinance, yeah, you can do that.
Okay.
okay, let's be clear. Is that an ordinance that can be introduced on Tuesday and approved?
We're going to adopt what we introduced last meeting.
Okay.
And that will go into effect 20 days after that.
And then we'll introduce a new ordinance.
No, that's,
No?
no, it's on publication.
Okay, sorry.
We're going to have 2 ordinances on Tuesday. One is an adoption and one will be an introduction. The introduction will be adding streets that were left off. But we'll be adopting
The existing.
the existing.
And it will be in effect immediately?
Upon publication.
At the minute the mayor signs it.
So,
I get a call.
do we have a path to getting it accomplished by a Memorial Day objective?
Yeah, you said that, yeah.
Well, I heard if this and if that, then it will be approved.
Well, I say.
Well, technically it's not until the mayor signs
I
it.
get that.
We'll get
So if we vote in favor on Tuesday night, all in favor, Brian signs it, it's in law.
Yeah, I mean, it's technically published, which is a few days.
Okay.
That'll be by Friday.
Okay.
We got it covered.
We'll make the weekend.
Good, we got that.
Well, no, just to be clear though, that was just for the downtown parking, 125 parking permits. All the other fines that we changed, that was a few months afterwards, are still up at the administrative courts on their desk waiting for approval for that. That's just the one fine that we did a couple months ago. Everything else they had, it's out of our hands right now, waiting for the approvals.
And you're right.
What's that?
And you're right, because it's been there for a while.
Good talking about things. Absolutely, but I mean,
Yeah, our goal was to have the whole package inclusive of those by Memorial Day.
It's as long or short as you want. For close.
All right, so then just upcoming resolution, appointing our zoning officers next agenda. And then aside from that, we go to executive session today, and as always, we're supposed to do the basis and get into the public meeting, so we're not going to come back and take any action.
Thank you everyone for coming out.